Chapter 5 Trial. Initially, Yami Tenchi looked startled. He stared at the tinted windows of the car, unsure about who the strange inhabitants were. However, after some thoughts, his gut had told him to trust the mysterious man from the window, and so he approached and entered the vehicle. Inside the back seat was Nick Hiroshi. At the front, Helios Atta rode with Nick's driver driving up front. Nick Hiroshi began the conversation with, "I'm sorry to have startled you, but it is important to get our destination as soon as possible to conduct business. My name is Nick Hiroshi, and I will be Hikari's attorney for the upcoming trial. It is nice to meet you, Yami Tenchi." "You didn't startle me that much," stated Yami, slightly relieved in his voice. Helios Atta looked at Yami and began asking, "So, how was the search for evidence?" "Well, Tofu and I were able to locate gunpowder residue from the window lining in the 102nd room, and there was a secret compartment in the floorboards that contained rifle components as well as some ammunition." He paused for a moment. There were some strange notes written in a foreign language among the inventory," stated Yami. That seems very substantial. I think that'll be a great use for our defense," mentioned Helios. "I'd have to agree. Say, why don't you show me those notes? There's a possibility I could decipher some of its contents," Nick Hiroshi exclaimed. "Well, I don't have current possession of all the material. Tofu decided to hold on to most of it. However, if we speak with Tofu, then we can grab all the stuff that we found," told Yami. "That sounds like a plan," stated Nick. The vehicle eventually arrived at the cathedral's gates, with Apollo standing there. He was among the crowd of monks, and they were having various conversations. Helios Atta rolled down his window, with more consideration than Nick had with Yami, and told his son to get in the back seat with his friends. Apollo Atta said his goodbyes to the monks and entered the back seat with Yami and Nick Hiroshi waiting inside. "Hello, Apollo," Yami said. "How's it going, everybody?" asked Apollo. Simultaneously, Nick and Yami replied, "Very good." Afterwards, the vehicle approached the Yashihara holding facility. They stopped at the gate to show their identification cards and were let in towards the main entrance. Nick Hiroshi approached the secretary's counter to inquire about meeting with Helios Atta. She then proceeded to ask, "Are there any individuals among you who are not part of the Atta family?" Nick Hiroshi replied that they had only brought a family friend along with them. In response, she stated, "Well, I'm sorry, but only legal professionals and family members are allowed to attend at this time." Nick approached Yami and told him, "I'm sorry, but it seems you're going to have to wait in this room until we've completed our talks." Accordingly, Yami acknowledged him by stating, "That's okay. I'm disappointed about this, but those are the rules, so I'll sit here and work on something." Yami approached a chair and began reading thoughtfully an operation manual on his recently purchased Fuji bicycle. In the meantime, Nick, Helios, and Apollo were led into a meeting room. In the room was Hikari chained to his chair, and he had a bodyguard standing at attention on the outside door. When Apollo saw his brother sitting there, he ran towards him and hugged him and stated, "Tomorrow we're going to kick ass and take names." To which Hikari responded, for the first time in many days, he was able to produce a smirk on his face. "Well, I can believe in that," stated Hikari Atta, laughfully. Nick approached Hikari and stated, "We've had some breakthroughs. Tofu and Yami were able to locate many items of interest, including rifle components, ammunition, and some notes from the Sentinel building. Tofu currently has those items, and we sent Kurai to meet with him. They should be here shortly." As they waited, 2 hours went by, and there wasn't a sign of Tofu or Kurai. Helios suddenly stood up from his seat and warningly stated, "I'll go see what happened." He went towards the door and left the meeting room. On the way, he noticed Yami still sitting there reading his bicycle manual and in focused trance. Helios approached him and tapped him on the shoulder. "Huh? What the?" Yami looked up at Helios and asked, "What's going on? Where are the others?" Helios looked at Yami, stating, "Tofu hasn't arrived at the facility yet. I'm going to look for him. Want to come along?" "Sure, let's get going then," mentioned Yami. Helios and Yami proceeded to exit the facility. Later, after some time searching, Helios and Yami came across an automobile wreckage on the shoulder of the road. They stopped at the site and exited their vehicle to investigate the scene. At first they didn't see anyone in the wreckage, however, from the corner of his eye, Helios noticed a figure laying on the grassy ridge. He advanced quickly to the figure, unsure whether or not the figure was alive or not, and kneeled downwards, putting his hand on the figure's shoulder. He moved the figure on its back and saw his Tofu lying there unconscious. Hey, Tofu! Are you alright? Wake up, man. Yami, come over here. I found Tofu, yelled Helios. Yami ran over to them and began looking around. He began thinking, something here doesn't seem right. Once Yami arrived, Tofu began slowly waking up. As he did, he murmured, "Where am I? What happened?" He looked up towards Helios and Yami while they were sitting next to him, and Helios looked at him and replied, "I'd like to know the same thing. Do you remember what happened here?" After trying to collect himself for a moment, Tofu began with, "Hold on, give me a moment to think. Oh yeah. Well, it began when I was driving towards the Yashihara holding facility, when a vehicle emerged on my right side, very close to my vehicle. I tried to make space between us, but he was consistently trying to get closer to me, so I honked on my horn to get him off. Yet that's when he slammed his vehicle into me as a response and persistently kept ramming. Because of this, I gunned it down the road, and when I thought I lost him, I reached a narrow strip of the road, and another vehicle materialized out of nowhere and hit me off the road. Whereas my car flipped and I fell out. Miraculously, I was in one piece, but before I fell unconscious, I noticed a group of men left their vehicles and began searching my vehicle. When it seemed they couldn't find what they were looking for, they returned to their vehicle and sped off." Upon hearing this statement, Helios and Yami looked at each other in total surprise. Finally, Helios cleared his throat and stated, "I don't think this is a coincidence that this plot happened so closely to my son's trial. I hate to ask you this, but did you have any evidence that was found for Hikari's trial with you?" Tofu looked at him and stated confidently, "It's not those bastards' lucky day. I had a grudging feeling that something like this would happen, so I've hidden the materials nearby at a secret location." "That's great to hear. Now, where can we find the evidence?" asked Helios. Tofu took out a map from his pocket and showed Yami and Helios the location where they could find the evidence. "See, it's a location between the citadel and here. Let's go get it." Tofu then brushed the dirt off his pants, and the trio headed back to the automobile scene. In the following morning, the selection of the jury was made for Arata Unmei's murder trial. In order to maintain fairness for the trial, a pool of potential jury members was selected not from Yashihara but from Orikayatsu. Orikayatsu was far enough away that the people, in theory, wouldn't hold a prejudice. When Nick Hiroshi heard the news, he consulted Hikari and stated, "Well, I think this decision will help us somewhat in our defense due to your family being originally from there, so there may be some favorable bias for us." In response, Hikari replied, "Well, if that's true, then it'll be very beneficial for our case. I'm quite shocked to have any advantage, truthfully." "Well, just have faith in the process," responded Nick. After their conversation, Nick Hiroshi called the member of the Ada family and their associates for them to come down to the faculty in order to be briefed about the trial guidelines. Once they arrived, Nick Hiroshi began with, "I'm glad all of you could make it today. Today is the beginning of the trial. I firmly believe that we are on the righteous side of this trial. Therefore, if we all do our part with strong dignity, then we will prevail in proving Hikari's innocence." After he finished speaking, a loud applause erupted, after which Nick provided them with more technical details, and once they finished, the group entered the courtroom. Subsequently, the group took to their seats in a solemn way, a way that appeared to the casual observer as if someone had died. Yami began observing the courtroom. He had noticed the judge was taking a recess and asked Nick, "Say, isn't this judge supposed to be here by now?" "Don't worry about it. He's consulting with some people. Or actually came slightly early," stated Nick. After a short period of time, the presiding judge Ichimoni Inbo arrived back into the courtroom. Once he did, the clerk began speaking in the middle of the courtroom. "Order in the court. The Honorable Mr. Justice Ichimono Inbo presenting." Everybody in the courtroom stood at attention towards the judge. "You may now be seated," stated Judge Ichimonji. The clerk resumed speaking with, "Today we will commence the trial of the government of Yashihara versus Helios Ata." Afterwards he took his seat. "Are all involved positions present here today?" asked Justice Ichimonji. Kazumi Masato approached her microphone. "I'm Kazumi Masato, and I will be representing the prosecution for the government of Yashihara in this trial." Afterwards she sat down as the defendant attorney stood. "Yes, I'm present, sir. My name is Nick Hiroshi, and I'm acting upon the behalf of the defense of the defendant, Helios Ata, in this trial." "Thank you both. Good morning, members of the jury. Today we will begin the process of being the determiner of justice based off the facts provided. In this process, I may weigh on specific evidence presented. However, you people are the only ones capable of presenting final judgment with accordance to the standards which have been cemented in law. Due to the nature of this crime, guilt must be unanimously decided upon for a final conviction. If no unanimous verdict is reached, then the trial may result in a hung jury, and thus the prosecution may call for an additional trial at a later date. Now I will ask the prosecution to present its case. Kasumi Masato stands. Thank you, Justice Ichimonji. Members of the jury, today the state intends to prove without a doubt that the defendant Hikari Ata had planned premeditatedly to commit the outrageous crime of homicide on the victim, our mayor Arata Unmei, on the fateful afternoon of September 19, 90 FE, in the Yashiharu Plaza. Then the clerk stood up and asked her, "Please call the first witness to the stand." Kasumi Masato then called up her first witness. He approached the stand. "Please state your name and occupation," asked Masato. "My name is Jung Yi Ma. I'm an event organizer who organized the recent plaza event for the departed Arata Unmei." "Mr. Ma, would you be so kind and inform the court as to where you were the afternoon of September 19th?" asked Masato. "Well, I was next to the stage where Mr. Unmei was giving his speech," stated Jung Ma. "Did you happen to notice anything out of the ordinary on the stage nearby?" asked Masato. "Well, yes, I heard a loud noise and shortly afterwards I noticed a figure approaching the stage from the left side," stated Jung Ma. "Do you see that person who approached the stage in this courtroom?" asked Masato. "Certainly. He's sitting over there in the defendant's seat," declared Jung Ma. "Okay, now tell me what did you see next?" asked Masato. "I saw Mayor Arata Unmei fall towards the stage, and while lying there on the stage, he began crawling towards the back curtains. As he moved there was a trail of blood that followed him. Meanwhile, I observed the defendant running through the curtains to the back of the stage. After that, I lost sight of him, so as I approached Arata Unmei to help out," told Jung Ma. "Did Arata Unmei say anything when you approached him?" asked Masato. "I heard him say one phrase, 'Find him,' as he lay there in mortal pain," stated Jung Ma. "That will be all for now," stated Masato, and she took her seat. The judge looked over the defense and inquired, "Would the defense like to cross-examine the witness?" "Yes, I have some questions for the witness," declared Nick Hiroshi, and he stood up and began with, "You stated earlier, Mr. Ma, that you saw a figure approach the stage after you heard a loud sound. Could you repeat from which side you saw this person?" "Yes, I saw this figure approach from the left side," stated Jung Ma. "So isn't it true that you also stated Mayor Unmei fell towards the stage when he was shot?" asked Nick Hiroshi. "Yes, that's what I saw," told Jung Ma. "Well then, if the victim was indeed shot from the left side as you indicate, wouldn't the victim fall backwards, not forward?" As Nick approached asking the question, Kasumi Masato spoke. "Objection! The question provided seems to be assuming elements of this case not confirmed and thus are leading the witness to a prescribed conclusion," declared Masato. Nick Hiroshi continued with, "The Honorable Ichimonji, I'm not trying to change evidence, merely question the observation." "Objection sustained. Please change the question," stated Ichimonji. "Did you observe Hikari Ata holding anything as he approached the stage?" asked Nick Hiroshi. "No, I didn't see him holding anything as he came closer to Arata Unmei," mentioned Jung Ma. "Did you see the gunshot wounds on the mayor?" asked Nick Hiroshi. "No, I was too far away to see the mortal wounds reported," Jung Ma. "You did see the trail of blood, though?" asked Nick Hiroshi. "I did. I saw it when the mayor crawled towards the back curtains." "Which direction was the blood trail moving in?" asked Nick. "Once the mayor turned around, it looked like he was moving on the podium towards the backstage," asked Jung Ma. "Okay, so there was blood. Was there any blood before he turned around?" asked Nick. "Well, I think I did see that there was some blood behind him before he turned around from my point of view," told Jung Ma. "So if my interpretation is correct, then there was blood spatter on the ground before the mayor did turn around," declared Nick Hiroshi. "Objection," stated Kasumi Masato. "Withdrawn. That will complete my examination," stated Nick Hiroshi, and he sat on the defendant's bench. "Mr. Ma, you are excused. You may now call the next witness, Ms. Masato," declared Justice Ichimonji. "The prosecution would like to call Hideo Juzaburo to the stand." Hideo approached the stand. "Please state your name and occupation," asked Masato. My name is Hideo Juzaburo. I'm a medical doctor with a specialty in human pathology, stated Juzaburo. Can you describe the scene of Yashiharu Plaza on September 19th once you arrived to examine the crime scene? Yes. Initially, when I arrived on the scene, a group of people were surrounding the stage, where there was a man lying behind the stage curtains with multiple wounds in which, under further investigation, seemed to have come from a firearm, in my professional opinion, stated Juzaburo. I understand. What can you tell the court today about those wounds on the victim's body? Asked Masato. Based on the size and shape of the wounds, they maintain a consistency that came from the same weapon and the same size bullets that showed that it must have been a handgun, told Juzaburo. How many rounds were in the victim's body? Requested Masato. From my observation, I came to the conclusion that there were 3 rounds that made impact with the victim's body, stated Juzaburo. What caliber of bullet was used in the assassination? Asked Masato. The caliber bullet used in all 3 rounds was 9.1 29mm parabellum, stated Juzaburo. At what time was the victim declared dead? Asked Masato. The victim was declared dead at the scene of the crime at the time was reported 16:10 in the afternoon on September 19th, FE. 90 FE, told Juzaburo. Thank you for your time. That will be all, Dr. Juzaburo, said Masato, and she rested on the bench. The judge announced the defense may begin the cross-examination if it wishes. The defense has questions for the good doctor, stated Nick Hiroshi proudly, and then asked, Dr. Juzaburo, you have provided a detailed report as to the deceased, Arata Unme, that includes the caliber, size of the bullets, the number of rounds, the type of weapon, and the time of death. However, I do not believe that the court has listened to a testimony of where the victim was shot. Would you please elaborate to provide us detail as to where the mayor was shot? After a moment of hesitation, the Dr. Juzaburo began with, the victim had 1 penetrating wound and 2 perforating wounds. The 2 bullets that exited the victim's body rammed into the wooden podium in which the speaker was speaking above. These wounds were delivered into the victim's back based on examination, stated Juzaburo. After Juzaburo finished speaking, there was a slight gasp given in the courtroom. Some murmurs were emerged from the striking silence. Would the bullet trajectory found at the scene of the crime for the 9.129 parabellum bullets be able to impact the mayor if they were shot from the mayor's right side? Questioned Hiroshi. Objection, Your Honor. These questions are leading to the conclusion that has them improved, stated Kazumi Masato. The judge responded by saying, I am interested in where you're going with this, with your questions, Mr. Hiroshi. The objection is overruled. Please continue with your questioning. Dr. Juzaburo was looking at Kazumi Masato. She gave him a slight nod. From the ballistics, it shows a rightward angle of impact in the mayor's back, so if the mayor had turned before his fatality, then it would be possible for the victim to be shot from the right side, in my professional opinion. Nick clasped his fist. Possible, yes. From my understanding of the word, then that means there is some doubt to be cast whether or not my client was responsible for this heinous crime, stated Nick Hiroshi. It must be the case unless there is evidence to show that there was another perpetrator on the scene, then my conclusion is that the victim must have turned before he was killed, announced Judge Juzaburo. In response, the defense would like to call a motion for evidence, specifically the murder weapon from the prosecution, called Nick Hiroshi. Based on recent questioning, the request will be granted, stated Justice Ichimonjo. He looked towards the prosecution. Please provide the murder weapon to show to the court, Miss Masato, asked Judge Ichimonji. The prosecution gathered the evidence and presented a 9.1 29mm Smith & Wesson Model 36 to the court. Here we have today the murder weapon that was used in the assassination based off the findings of Dr. Juzaburo and other forensic analysis. We can determine perpetrator using techniques including the use of nihydrin to reveal the fingerprints. As you can see the purple marks here, and when we compare them to the defendant's fingerprints, there is a 100% match, claimed Kazumi Masato. You may begin your questioning, Nick Hiroshi, and afterwards we will take a short recess, stated Justice Imonji. Where was the weapon found? Asked Nick Hiroshi. The weapon was located a kilometer away from the gully, stated Kazumi Masato. So you're telling me my client did not have the weapon on? Wait, what is that smell? Nick Hiroshi stated it alarmingly. Once he mentioned the smell, the other participants in the courtroom noticed the smell as well. There erupted a panic, and a clerk approached the judge to tell him where to escape to. Meanwhile, an officer of the law announced, Everyone, please be calm and leave the premises in the orderly manner. 2 officers approached Hikari, called for evacuation, and began heading out the front doors. When they arrived at the outside light, they headed down the courtroom stairs. Once they arrived at the bottom of the stairs, a large explosion erupted nearby. The officers became distracted, and Hikari broke free from their clutches. He made a run for it. The officers gave chase. They were about to reach him. However, suddenly a car pulled up. It screeched. A group of men stepped into the vehicle and they grabbed Hikari. As he struggled, they tied him up and threw him in the back seat of the car. The cops yelled, "Hey, stop that now!" At the same time, one of the men pulled a rifle from the car and shot a few rounds into the officers. They collapsed into the dirt, and the men got back into the car, and the mysterious group drove off quickly. Chapter 6. The Escape. In the Yashiharu courtyard, the audience of the court scrambled to take cover. While they were doing this, a panic inside Yashiharu Square erupted. Citizens were fleeing on foot away from the blast location. As the explosion had started, a set of fires broke out into the nearby structures. The authorities called the fire department to contain the flames and ordered the court audience to return to their homes until further notice. Scene. The following day, Kurai Tenchi walked upstairs to wake up his sons. He announced, "It's time to wake up. I know it's early, but given the current circumstances, I need you boys to be up and about now," at the top of the stairs. In response, slowly the 2 boys woke up from a deep sleep and got dressed and headed down the stairs. When they arrived, Kurai was sitting at the table, tuning the radio dial. He reluctantly turned it towards the Yashiharu news channel. When the audio came alive, there was a static noise in the background. Soon after a few seconds, the broadcast began with announcer Jay Okubo beginning with, "Hello, ladies and gentlemen of Yashiharu. This is Jay Okubo. Today we have a special announcement broadcast scheduled. In turn of the recent events that have transpired in and around our area, the local government has issued the following proclamation. First, the explosion in Yashiharu last night was an act of rebellion. Because of this, all citizens are ordered to stay inside until a greater stability can be achieved. Despite this, if compliance is met, then the local citizens' safety is guaranteed. Next, if a citizen finds a piece of unknown material, they should report it to the proper authorities. Also, if anybody has information, then that information should be shared as well. Third, if a citizen is found to be involved with these recent acts of rebellion, then the government of Yashiharu will publicly punish those who have done wrong to our society." This concludes the official statement proclamation. Now on to today's weather broadcast. Kurai sat there with a thoughtful face, and he turned the dial off from the station and told his sons, "I think we've heard enough of that nonsense today. So because the area is locked down today, I suppose you boys have a free day. Do as what you will." He stood up, walked towards his office, and once he entered, he shut the door quickly. Genso looked at Yami and stated, "These officials might be out of their mind to think that people will just sit here and with nothing to do." "I agree. Do you have any plan of action?" asked Yami. "Certainly. I'm going to consult Dr. Kospalden and see if he has any connections that can give us a lead to what happened to Hikari. After all, he is a crazy scientist. He must be involved somehow," stated Genso laughingly. "Yeah, probably," Yami laughed. "I will be impressed with your magic if you can get there without getting noticed," mentioned Yami. "Oh, you have little faith. I'll be back by tonight." "Say, where are you going, Yami?" asked Genso. "Training is calling me today. I have some ideas for new techniques. Perhaps I'll contact Apollo to try them out. Otherwise, my path will be solitary." "Well, that sounds decent," stated Genso. After their conversation, Genso went to the home's front door. He slowly opened it to take a look. "Well, the coast seems clear right now," he whispered, and he left. Once Genso arrived on the outskirts of the main street, Genso looked around at the area and at the inner Yashiharu Plaza. He looked at the nearby housing. The building that was normally housed many people going about their daily activities was barren and silent. Even the local inn was quiet, a feat that even concerned family members and self-proclaimed moral leaders couldn't imagine accomplishing on a Saturday. Indeed, he hadn't seen a town this empty in a long time. "I better watch my footing," he thought. As he progressed further towards the German-based Science Institute, he observed a group of people gathering outside the house at the edge of town. He leaned in for a further look, and he saw those individuals standing around wielding weapons and appearing to him to be newly manufactured rifles. Genso witnessed a man take an ascension onto a soapbox, and Genso moved slightly closer and overheard the following. "Gentlemen, yesterday's plan went very well. Today we shall implement stage 2 of Operation Archangel." After hearing this, the audience reacted favorably. The man continued with,
"Let's head out."
The group split up into different groups and entered the fleet of multiple military-grade vehicles. When Genso saw them moving towards him, he quickly moved hiding spots to a new position, and once the scene was all clear, he made the last stretch to Koff Spaulding's laboratory. As he approached the front door, he knocked. "Dr. Koff Spaulding, please, open up. This is an emergency," he stated discreetly. Genso nonetheless received no answer. After some time, he went around the back and towards the windowsill. Because of the height, Genso looked around for a platform to stand on. He found a crate and moved it below the window. He stepped up on the crate and saw the doctor lying there in a vast room with his hands on his desk. In his concern, he pulled out a lockpick and worked on picking the window lock. After some tedious work, he was able to get the satisfactory click. Once open, Genso quickly climbed into the lab and ran over to the doctor. Genso put his hands on Koff Spaulding's shoulder and shook him. "Wake up, damn it!" "Huh? It's no time to wake up yet, silly," Koff Spaulding told in a sleepy daze. Genso looked at him and got aggravated and told him, "Look, I can't mess around right now. There's some serious stuff going down in Yashihara Plaza." The doctor now looked more awake. "Does this commotion have to do with the Arata Unmei murder trial business?" "Yes, I would say that it does. Mostly, unfortunately," stated Genso. The doctor looked Genso in the eyes and advised, "I really don't want to get involved. Politics is a very messy and business and negative on the mind. Those two attributes are some of the best avoided at all costs." "I understand that, sir. It's just that I'm looking for a lead in the personal matter that is related to the situation." "Do pray tell, my boy, what is on your mind, my assistant?" told Dr. Koff Spaulding. "I don't know if you've turned on the radio or read the paper recently, but my brother's friend has been kidnapped, and, well, I thought I'd ask you because you might have some additional networks to work with, along with so here goes nothing. A little while ago, I came across rumors that strange ships have to be sailing along the harbor, ships in which are from a foreign entity, and they seem to be carrying contraband. That is which I have come to the conclusion with. These ships, I believe, are involved with the Council." "The Council? What exactly do you think is going on here?" the doctor asked, clearly intrigued. Genso continued with, "Along with these ship rumors, there's some rumors of a power struggle within the Council and the respective government. Usually I would disgrade crazy ideas, yet when I heard that Kasumi Masato was put in the charge of the prosecution for the Unmei trial, I wonder what possible motives was there for her taking this case specifically. After all, it seems like too much of a coincidence, with the trial getting interrupted with a bomb blast from rebellious factions. The idea becomes more clear in my mind, and what really made me decide the validity of it all was on my travels to your lab." "What did you see before you came here?" asked Dr. Koff Spaulding. Genso grabbed his shoulder nervously. "I witnessed a large group of military-aged men with heavy firepower gathering and planning operations. There was material in the possession that matched the sightings from the mysterious ship spoken of earlier. I must have arrived around the time they were finished plotting because they headed out towards the main square shortly afterwards. I can't reasonably come to another conclusion after seeing that type of weaponry and machinery. It must have been the Council," declared Genso. "I think the evidence you've spoken about, you seem to back your hypothesis of the Council being involved in one way or another in some devious plot. I would, however, like to ask a few questions, though. Number 1, how do you know that I haven't been involved in one of these plots you speak of? After all, I am a scientist, and scientists have in the past sacrificed an ethics code in the name of science. And number 2, what information could I possibly provide to help your cause, even if I did agree to muse it over?" asked Dr. Koff Spaulding. Genso looked at Dr. Koff Spaulding with serious eyes. "I thought about what you said, and, well, I think you're bluffing because you and I both know that when corrupt organizations achieve their goal, the first action they take is purging people that are not wanted, or rather, those who are not particularly zealous to their cause. It's a matter of self-preservation, a human imperative, and any fringe benefits wouldn't override. Now, for what I have to come to ask you is about information that leads to the whereabouts of the Council black sites," told Genso Tenshi. Dr. Koff Spaulding began clapping. My, you are a true scientist. You not only provided a claim, you also provided reasonable evidence to explain your ideas. Fortunately for you, I would rather end up in a ditch than collaborate with those masquerading as the Puritans of society. For your request, I do have some knowledge of the projects. However, I have a request in exchange. "What is it? Would you like?" asked Genso. "Once you check out these sites, I want you to report what you find there for me," stated Koff Spaulding. I can do that. How much do you know?" questioned Genso. "Let us begin. For the sites themselves, there are many that are run by the Council branch of the government. Most of these sites are relatively easy to find information on. However, some of the sites are disguised in, on the surface, a business as usual, but under the location there may be additional research being conducted. In my opinion, the Council would not conduct any top-secret research in a nearby location to protect security and scrutiny, so we can generally disregard locations in Honshu. That leaves a few general locations to check out, such as Sakaido, Iao, Ryukyu, Ogasawa, Daito, and Izu Islands. That sounds like a very time-consuming, eliminating process. What else can we do to narrow the search down, asked Genso. If you can arrange the transportation to explore these venues, then I will do my part to find out more information, told Dr. Koff Spaulding. I will find a way. Now, I better head out, stated Genso. Be careful out there, mentioned Koff Spaulding, and Genso approached the window and climbed out of it. Meanwhile, on the other side of Yashiharu, Yami Tenchi rode his bicycle to the Ata residence. Once he arrived to his destination, he saw commotion from the inside of the Ata house. There he saw government forces interrogating the family. He quickly took cover to hide and observe. This is outrageous! What right do you have to barge into my house? Yelled Helios Ata. One of the soldiers of the room approached Helios and punched him. He fell back and grasped his face. The soldier then declared, "We are currently under martial law. Therefore, your rights are not guaranteed. Now, if you cooperate with us, then everything will run smoothly. We want to know about your whereabouts of your son, so we can resume the prosecution." Helios stood back up. "I hate to break the news to you, but I'm clueless as where he is," stated Helios. "Such insolence!" And the soldier began to ready his fist to strike again. "That'll be fine for now, Sergeant," stated another soldier in the background. From what Yami saw, this young man speaking must have been the leader of the group. He walked down towards Helios. "My name is Captain Hifscraft. I've ordered to gather information about this matter to a sufficient extent. Otherwise, I will have to take you in," told Captain Crash. Yami, still hidden, began to recognize this man as one of the new students introduced at the school and thought, whatever this is, it goes deep. He also noticed that Apollo was not inside the house. "That crazy guy? Where is he?" He looked around and decided he couldn't do anything with the soldiers at the residence. However, he may be able to alert Apollo to what was happening, so he rode the bicycle down the road and passed a handful of kilometers away. He found Apollo training by climbing trees in the forest. Yami departed his bike and ran towards Apollo. Apollo noticed him and asked questionably, "What's going on? Why are you in such a hurry?" "There are officials at your place. They're interrogating your father. We should hurry back," Yami yelled. "All right, let's go." Apollo got off the tree and embarked on his bike, and the duo headed back to the Otto residence. Once there, they saw the police presence outside. They were very worried, so they dropped their bicycles and ran to the house. Then they found Apollo's mother Sola standing there sobbing. "Mother, what happened?" Apollo asked.
"The authorities took your father away, Apollo. Please, don't go after him. I don't want to lose my son as well," she stated melancholingly. Apollo approached the family dining table and slammed his fist viciously. "Damn it! I can't believe this." Before approaching him, Yami, he began thinking, "This is a very volatile situation. I'm very pessimistic about this. However, I should show support now before it's too late." He patted Apollo on the shoulder and stated, "Your old man will be fine. Have some faith about this. In your meantime, let's go to the others and talk about the situation." I guess you're right. Let's go down and we can continue in the meantime." Apollo told while calming down. "Say, why don't we travel to Tofu's shop? He was helpful with your brother's defense case. The guy has a variety of abilities that may aid us," stated Yami. That sounds like a good idea," told Apollo, and they headed out. Elsewhere, Helios Ata was taken to the outskirts of Yashiharu. He was released from the transport vehicle and surrounded by his captain. Captain Hipcraft approached him and began speaking with, "Let's begin with speaking about your loyalties during the last great war of our nation. You're esteemed scientists that aided our efforts in steam development. Those efforts have sincerely been recognized by our people. With that being said, however, why refuse to reaffirm your loyalties at this time of need? After all, your son has committed a very serious sin. Surely it is not justified that he should face justice for his actions?" questioned Captain Crash. Helios looked at him very seriously. "My son has no involvement in the murder of Arata Unmei. For that I am 100% certain, and nothing you can say will change my mind." "Is that all you have to say?" asked Captain Crash. "Certainly," told Helios. "You've left me no choice, then. Men, tie this man up." The soldiers charged Helios, tied him up to a tree, and the man lifted him up so that he lay there from the tree branch with a noose around his chest. Once strung from a branch, the men tied lead weights to his ankles. At once Helios felt the weight tugging him down towards the earth. Captain Crash stood there in front of his hanging body. "If you change your mind, then yell to the men and they will let you down." And he walked away, and the majority of the men drove off. After a few days passed and Helios had revealed to the men nothing, Captain Crash returned with his entourage and stated, "I must commend you on your determination to suffer such a pain. Very well. Men, let this man down." They followed his orders and let Helios down, and seeing this, observed the lack of circulation in Helios' leg. "It looks like you will be needing medical attention soon. Please, let's end this folly and tell me where your son is." Helios stayed silent, so Captain Crash stated, "This is your final chance. Where is your son?"
he yelled angrily. Helios did not respond, so he walked closer to Helios and ordered the guards to place Helios on his knees, and Captain Crash pulled out his Type 14 9-bow. He told Helios goodbye, and shot Helios twice in the chest and once in the head. As Helios' dead body lay there in the grass, the officials departed in their vehicle, back to base. At the same time elsewhere, a few days prior, Apollo and Yami entered Tofu's shop to collaborate on what would become an exceptional journey. Scene. A few days before. Welcome, my friends. How are you? Asked Tofu. Yami and Apollo sat down next to Tofu's counter. Yami began with, "There's a negative situation going on at the moment. Helios was taken by the police," told Yami. Well, Apollo sat there quietly. Tofu looked at Apollo and stated, "Let's do our best. Well, today, Nick Hiroshi called me and told me he received a waiver from the band in order to head to the courtroom to bring evidence about the case. I can contact to see if any strange movement is involved." "Thank you," stated Apollo. Tofu walked over to the phone and dialed up Nick. "Hello? Nick?" asked Tofu. "Tofu! The situation is bad over here. Some rebels have started an assault in the city square. I'm in my office right now, taking cover. I'll try to make our way over there as soon as possible," told Nick Hiroshi in a panicked tone, and he hung up. Tofu placed the phone back on the rung. "Well, apparently a rebellion is going on downtown. They're using explosives and shooting people. I think we can use this deadly situation to our advantage," mentioned Tofu. "What do you mean? What do you have in mind?" asked. "For one thing, one of the projects I've been working on is this airplane, a small Cessna 172. The reason why is that Kurai Tenchi had planned to fly to Iyo to go on a pilgrimage, to give offering and travel through the historical path. I even got an advance payment. However, since the environment has changed, I should reveal that I finished a few hours ago. Maybe we could use it to locate Helios and maybe even Hikari," told Tofu. "Let's do it," announced Apollo cheerfully. Yami cleared his throat. "I'm surprised about this, what you've told us, Tofu, although I vehemently disagree with your idea. It's too dangerous. The rebels and the government forces will take both aims at us. Besides, who would pilot the plane well enough to dodge the heavy fire? Diplomacy seems to be our only true pragmatic option in this particular situation. Let's wait for Nick Hiroshi to arrive and we can further deliberate on the matter." Tofu and Apollo both looked at Yami in disappointment. Apollo spoke in a erratic manner. "You're right, Yami. We're only 3 men. Surely we can't take it on an entire company." Then they entered a time of silence, and finally Nick Hiroshi arrived at the shop. Once there, he had collapsed in the doorway. Tofu hurried over and found that he was hit on the side. "Must have been a stray bullet," admitted Nick as he became more pale in the face. "Quickly, grab my medical kit from the cupboard on the right side at the top." Apollo sprinted over with the kit and handed it to Tofu. In his hand, he also pulled out a knife and asked Apollo to keep pressure while he removed the bullet from Nick's side. Much to the disregard of Nick's intense pain, once he finished, the group helped. "Yami, grab a bottle of booze from the cupboard." He ran to the bottle over to Tofu and made Nick down some of the whiskey. "Patch up Nick. Wounds to the best of the ability." Once Nick regained some strength, he told that, "I saw many locals at Yashiharu Plaza lying on the ground. From what I could tell, it seems as if the government is losing the battle. So let's barricade for the remainder of the day and try to tell as many people as we can contact to stay out of the area." Tofu proceeded to tell the other members, and then he had some camping equipment that they could use for the night, but the rest of the day planning for the next day. Following day. Once the sun was up for the day rose, Tofu approached the radio and turned the dial, and what the group heard shocked them. The unknown began speaking. "My fellow citizens, today marks a new day in the future of Yashiharu. The corruption of yesteryear has been annihilated, and now the rightful heir to this land has ascended. The Council. Some of you may have heard strange rumors of our actions, but rest assured that our cause is a righteous one. Once our organization witnessed the tragic murder of Mayor Arata Unme, we knew it was time to take action had come upon us. Regrettably, because the former leadership didn't see our reasonable policy as the correct one, and after many attempts at diplomacy, unfortunately the old government leadership has to be purged from the world. Nonetheless, the gods are on our side, so we were victorious, despite limited numbers. After our military triumph, the leadership of the old government has recognized our sovereignty and rightful rule here. Thus, we will be making some changes, mostly administrative, yet some of the troublemakers must be dealt with at first, and so we can enjoy a better world. Over the course of the next few hours, these routes will begin. Have no fear. As if you were innocent, then no harm will come. That is all. Good day, subject." Chapter 7. Sinister. The raids began immediately. Citizens were grabbed from their homes and dragged into the streets. Most of these unfortunate souls were members of the old government. While some of the had staunch loyalties to the government, others were merely opportunists looking to increase their perceived value to society. No institution remained untouched from these raids. Even the Yashiharu School of Academics and Martial Arts were targeted. The principal was charged with agitation for allegedly pushing a non-compliance doctrine to the precious youth. Despite the remorse for these actions, the resistance given from the people was minor, most simply apathetically accepting the unlucky fate of others. Yet at the same time, a few began plots of resistance. Over time, the Ada family and the Tenchi family saw the disappearance of Helios as a direct threat not only to themselves but also to the people.
Eventually, Genso became stuck on finding a way to explore the different black sites, until Yami told him about a plane that Tofu had completed shortly before the takeover, and that was to be used for their father's trip. We should ask him to use it, Genso instructed. I'm not so sure about that. Our father will prioritize our safety first, spoke Yami solemnly. Genso approached Yami and stated, Our father is more of a daredevil than, He towed the line since mother is away, but if we show our determination to do this, then you'll have to at least think about it, informed Genso confidently. Fine, nothing can get worse than what we are currently under, stated Yami steadfast. The brothers approached Kurai's office and knocked on the door. Come in, yelled Kurai to his desk. Genso approached ostensibly and pronounced, We are here to ask you to use your plane in order to find our friend Hikari. No way in hell, responded Kurai. Genso not taking the setback lightly. Tell me exactly why not, stated Genso. The reason is very simple. You need a plan if you're going to accomplish any feat. Moving aimlessly will not help the situation, Kurai stated firmly. He continued with, Come back with a plan, and I may consider it. Otherwise, forget about it, Kurai announced. That's fine, replied Genso and Yami, looking in disbelief. Followed his brother out of the office and shut the door. Genso looked back at his papers and had an amused expression on him. He thought, this development sure was to be expected. After all, Artesia and I are very ardent for what we want. Hopefully we can all make it out of this mess in one piece. And he continued his work. Genso ran up the stairs and grabbed some drafting paper and writing utensils. Come on, let's get going, Genso told Yami. Where do you want to go? Asked Yami. I've been working with Professor Koff Spaulding on a plan. I need to let him know that I've got a transportation available. Okay, we'll head out, stated Yami. Scene. The news of Helios Atto's fate hit the Atto family very hard, yet Apollo did not believe the evidence told until the family finally saw the corpse of his father. After the sighting, an internal anger began stirring inside of him. He knew without a doubt who was to blame, and he was very determined to get revenge for this unjust persecution. So when the opportunity arose, Apollo dashed over to Tofu's shop and began brainstorming for their journey. When Genso and Yami arrived, they were shocked to see an unusual serious face on their friend, an expression that exhumed tension. What's the matter? Asked Yami innocently. Apollo stood up from the table and told him, The worst has happened. My fears have come about now. My father is no longer among the living. Therefore I will find a method for proper revenge. Yami looked astonished. It had been one of the most sophisticated things Apollo had said, and because of it, he knew that they must continue no matter the cost. Yami, without thinking, told that it must have been that captain I saw interrogating Helios that is responsible, yet his name was Hifcrash. However, Apollo, I'm warning you. We need to focus on the mission. After that, we'll go from there. Apollo looked downtrodden. What is the mission exactly? Asked Apollo. Genso, looking at him, finally spoke up. We just got back from Dr. Koff Spaulding's laboratory. The plan is to find the black sites of the Council. If we can do that, we should be able to find your brother. In order to accomplish this, I think we should split up our search. You and Yami will go north, and I will travel south, told Genso. What is the main objective of our search? Asked Apollo. First, we need to locate the site. Once this task is accomplished, either a group will contact the other and then plan a method of attack, stated Genso. I understand that, but we only have one operable plane, right? Asked Apollo. Since I'm traveling alone, I will take the plane for better security. You two will take the boat that someone we know will contact us with, told Genso. I've never traveled that far in boat before. It should be interesting, stated Yami. Who is going to bring the vessel? Asked Apollo. Genso looked at the group and smirked, saying, You'll see in a short time. She should be here soon, he stated. After a few minutes, there was a knock on the door. Genso entered the door. Yes, please, come in. At the door, there was none other than Ice Hiroshi at the door. Ice, what are you doing here? Asked Yami. She proceeded to sit down in the chair. My father is a boat builder. Didn't you know that? Asked Ice. Oh, I never thought to ask, stated Yami, embarrassingly.
It's alright. The whole thing seems like good luck. One of the reasons Gento was able to come in contact with Dr. Koff-Spaulding was because of my family's relationship with the boat-making business. Steam is a major component of the technology, I told Ice proudly. Gento with his back against the counter. I appreciate it, ma'am. And Gento tipped his hat. Who you calling ma'am? I'm still young, Ice declared angrily, chasing after Gento. Seeing this, the group began laughing. When the commotion settled, Ice collected herself and stated, Follow me to the yard. There you'll find the boat to take you where you want to go. The group agreed and headed out. Once they arrived at the naval yard, Apollo and Genso admired the craftsmanship of the vessel. At a U-shaped hull made out of cedar with an interior composed of cypress, the port and starboard donned midnight black paint. The most impressive features, however, were that of the mechanisms of the boat, which donned a triple expansion steam engine. An engine in which the steam passed through the cylinder of large sizes and internal pressure decreased. This allowed for the propellers to allow the sailors to cross large areas of maritime seas without the need for laborious manual rowing. Wow, this is an incredible vessel, exclaimed Yami. I smirked. I'm glad you like it. Just remember to take care of her. There was a lot of work put into it, she stated. With that settled, here's a map of the area you guys will be traveling. It includes the waterways from the Korean Strait and nearby provinces of Saroguk and Honam. When you arrive, ride the coast up towards Wonju and start there. What are you looking for? Site 4. This is where Dr. Koff-Spaulding marked on the map. One last thing. The doctor told me to warn you that the coast may have additional security, so tread lightly and stay in cover as most as possible. Yami and Apollo both stated, Thanks for your help. We'll try to do our best, and headed out the door. The group split up. When Yami and Genso arrived home, they told their father about the new plan, and he accepted. The group decided to leave in the pitch black of night, as there was going to be less agents of Inrio Soda lurking near the coast. Unfortunately, they couldn't have been more wrong. Genso, Yami, and Apollo arrived at the beachhead. As they were about to leave the port, soldiers surrounded the area. Freeze! No one moves! Yelled a few of the men. Oh shit! Cursed Yami. Stay calm, keep going, I have a backup plan, Genso told. Yami and Genso took off running and unlatched their vessel. Soldiers began shooting at the boat. While the pair took cover, Genso pulled out a mechanism from his pocket and flipped a switch. It set off some explosives. Kaboom! And a smoke screen misted the group. In the confusion, Genso yelled, Hurry! You don't have much time! And Yami gunned the pedal, and the vessel sped off quickly. In the resultant chaos, Genso ran like hell towards Tofu's shop and lay low for the rest of the night. Once Yami felt that the coast was clear, he analyzed the boat structure and stated, We were very fortunate that our engine wasn't hit, or else we'd be goners. Apollo looked at him and smiled, saying, Perhaps my new relationship with the foreign god has provided us safety. Whatever the reason for our luck, I'll take it, mentioned Yami, and he handed Apollo the map. Take a look at it when the sun goes up. I'm going to fall asleep for a little while. I'll take charge in a few hours. After some traveling, Apollo could see the sunrise off the coast of the peninsula, where he could also see some guards watching. He navigated the craft rightward and turned off the engine, letting the vessel flow with the northeastern current. The guards on the coast didn't seem to mind the ghost vessel and continued on their guard duty. After some time delay, they made it to Wonju and landed the vessel in a remote beachhead. Apollo and Yami hid the craft in the covering of a nearby cave and headed in the mountainous landscape. Wonju's landscape contained many mountain peaks that covered the peninsula on the coast. From its source came the headstream that fed into Korea's major rivers, including the Han River. Because of this, Yami told Apollo that they should embark on one of the waterways, if they couldn't find Site 4. Apollo and Yami began their journey in the mountains by scouting out a nearby area. Once they determined the area was clear, they set up a marked camp for when the sun went down. Remember now, meet back here at 2200 hours, otherwise we'll assume we have problems, told Yami to Apollo. I understand, said Apollo, and they split off in separate directions. Yami stayed back and set up an A-frame terrace by landmarking a tree with a forked branch at 6 feet in the air next. Yami lifted a long fallen tree and placed it in the forked branch. He patted the tree with support branches to keep it sturdy. After that, he took a local vegetation and spread it out in the area from bottom to top and masked its presence after he finished. He wiped his forehead with his arm and looked at his watch. 1500 in the afternoon. Not bad. I should head back in the area of search now. And so he went west into the further dense woods. Meanwhile, on Apollo's search, he came across a campsite that appeared to be abandoned, so he ventured down to the center. There he found some timber lying in the pit and other supplies. When they when he went to leave, he saw some rumbling in a nearby bush. Apollo curiously approached the noise when a snake rushed out, swinging its body. Apollo, caught off guard, fell backwards, and the snake proceeded to lunge at his arm with its teeth expended. It bit him in his forearm. In shock, he swung his arm rightward. The snake held on. Then, quickly, Apollo used his left hand to rip the snake off his arm and threw it. He got up and stepped on its tail, and as it tried to run away, he killed it with his knife. Afterwards, Apollo looked at his right arm and saw a wound that was already swelling and blistering. This is bad. I need to hurry back to get treatment. So he headed back to the campsite. On the way back, he began losing consciousness, and while he was doing so, he saw in his blurry eyes some people standing in the distance and thinking, "I'll be okay," and then he collapsed. When Apollo woke, he was lying on a bed in a shelter. Firstly, he looked at his arm and noticed it was bandaged up. A voice emerged overhead from the outside of the room. "You're very lucky, young man, that we found you lying there. If you hadn't any help, you'd be a dead man," told the mysterious voice. "Who are you?" asked Apollo. "We call ourselves the followers of light. We train our body and our souls up to the mountains, as we do not belong to modern life. It seems not to suit us. Now, for the matter of your injury. You were bit by a rock snake. It is a very venomous creature. However, with the aid of some herbal medicines, we were able to stabilize you. Yet it will take time for your recovery from your journey. I am Kwak Kwang Sung, by the way," stated the man. "Thank you for the help. My name is Apollo. I come from over the sea on the mission, but I can't reveal the details of that. Just know it's for a good cause," stated Apollo. "I will take your word on that. Anyways, be careful, as there are men who will make the rounds here. They sometimes stop to check for stowaways. Because of that, you should prepare yourself," Kwak stated. "I can do that," stated Apollo. And so over the course of the following 2 days, Apollo tried to make contact with Yami with no avail. Distressed, he decided that the best course of action was to rest until he could leave. As Kwak said, the guards arrived on the 3rd day. They demanded to audit the monks' living quarters, and once they reached Kwak's room, they asked, "Now who may that be?" "He's just a visitor from a nearby village. He was injured by a snake, so we're offering him a place to stay until he recovers," stated Kwak. "I'll be the judge of that," stated the man, and approached Apollo's bedside. "Young man, what's your name?" "I have no name. Rather, it isn't important, as it is worldly, and I don't adhere to the laws of this world," stated Apollo with a smooth acting sense. The man looked disgruntled. "If that is the case, then come speak with our leader, and he will see what your worth is." And so the men grabbed Apollo and took him to the main square. Once there, they let him go, and he stumbled forward. In the front of Apollo was a wild-looking man, whose years of battles defined him. "Ah, yes. Aren't you an interesting specimen? Tell me, what's your style you're proficient in?" asked the worldly man. "Why do you suppose I train in the ways?" asked Apollo. "It is because I see the fight in your eyes. I want to battle you. If you accept, you have 3 days to recover. If you win, then you're free to leave, and you won't be bothered by us. But if you lose, then you'll be our prisoner. What do you have to say?" asked the wild man. "I accept your challenge," stated Apollo. "Excellent! Foe hasn't had a worthy opponent in a while. Come on, my men, let's return to my base." And the group left. Once they were gone, Apollo asked, "Who were those guys anyways?" Kwak looked at him and stated, "They're simply thugs of a mining complex. They search in the area every week or so in order to take supplies from us. The leader is Fo-Ho. I fear that he is stronger than you currently, but he isn't wrong about one thing. You do seem to have potential. I think we can unlock some of your potential with some training," said Kwak. "You've got my interest piqued," told Apollo, and so they began training. Elsewhere in the world, Yami began worrying when Apollo didn't show up at 2200 hours. "Think, what should I do now?" he asked himself and decided, "It's time to head towards Apollo's direction. If he's injured, then maybe there's something I can do to help." So he headed north, trying to trace Apollo's tracks. When he got to the encampment where Apollo was bitten, in the area there were many of Fo-Ho's men investigating the area. After some time, it seemed as if they began leaving. Yami approached slowly on the trail, and he found a dead snake with a knife wound in the corpse. Upon examination, Yami noticed that the wound looked a lot like a knife that he and Apollo had brought him, and thought to himself, "This better not be Apollo's doing, otherwise he's in deep shit. I might be looking for a corpse instead." Unknowing to Yami, behind him 2 men approached and spotted him. "You there! Stop where you are!" one of them shouted. Yami calmly lifted his hands above his head, and the pair approached. We're taking you in now. And so one of them went to handcuff Yami. Yami grabbed the man's arm and pulled downwards and used his knee to bash in his head. The man staggered backwards. Yami grabbed him by the neck and charged the same man. In a shock, the second man began firing at his comrade until Yami slammed his cap and the second man, putting them to the ground. He let go of the gun and Yami grabbed it, held his breath and shot the man twice in the chest. The commotion alerted the others to Yami's location. They rushed back to the encampment. Yami found a hiding place in one of the trees and observed the center of the site. From his calculation, he determined that there were 5 men, and if he were going to survive, he determined that he must end them without being seen. After an hour of high-alert searching, Fuzzman began patrols around the area. Yami climbed down from his perch and found some mud to camouflage himself mildly. Due to the nature of the patrols, one of the guards would step out farther than the rest, and one faithfully did. Yami would sneak up behind the man when he turned around to return and covered his mouth and stabbed him in the spine. This brutal technique worked, and Yami dragged the body to a nearby bush. Because of the missing patrol, Yami had to act quickly, so he moved to the next patrol and took him out. Now there were 3 men remaining on the search. 2 of the men were talking to one another and another stood guard. In order to attract the single man's attention, Yami threw a stick to the outside corridor. The guard heard the noise, and as he approached, Yami attacked him from the side and neutralized him. For the final pair, Yami went to climb onto the roof of the building that they were standing under. He determined this time. He jumped down, and as one of the men quickly reacted, the second stabbing of both of them to their demise. The killing caused Yami committed deeply affected him, so he approached an offering shrine in the area and burned incense while giving prayer. May these souls rest for eternity, he remarked under his breath, and continued forward on his quest to find Apollo. Yami Tenchi kept traveling northwards until he reached the village of the Followers of the Light, and he was greeted by one of the monks. "Welcome, my fellow traveler. What brings you here today?" asked the monk, politely. "I'm here looking for my friend. From my discoveries, it looks like he might be injured, so I'd like to meet with him soon," stated Yami. "Is that so?" asked the monk skeptically. "Tell me, what is your name?" continued the monk. "My name is Yami Tenchi, and my friend's name is Apollo. We were separated on our journey," mentioned Yami. "Ah, yes, he is here. However, he may not be disturbed because he has an important duty to accomplish for next tomorrow," told the monk. "What has he gotten himself into?" asked Yami in a foul mood. "Oh, you misunderstood me. I mean his duty is one of greatness, not of mischief. Tell you what, if you like, you may stay in the nearby room. The condition for this offer is that you don't interfere with his training," declared the monk. "I can accept those terms. Say, what is your name?" asked Yami. "It's not polite to ask the name of others without telling your own, but nonetheless, my name is Kwak Huang Sung. It's good to me to know the same cloth as my disciple," told Kwak. "Name's Yami Tenchi. I hope that Apollo keeps to his promise." "He sure will if he knows what's good for him," stated Kwak. Hearing this statement, Yami got a chill down his spine. Yet Yami was in no mental shape to produce a comeback, so he conceded to the demands of Kwak, and Yami was led to his room. Once there, he began thinking about the night's events. "There's nothing I could do. Those men would have taken me away and probably tortured me, maybe even killed me. In the end, what's done is done. I must continue forward, although I have a bad feeling about what's going to happen soon." And so after his internal monologue, he began feeling sleepy and eventually fell asleep. Just across the way, Apollo was studying diagrams that Kwak had given to him. Once Kwak arrived into his training area, he asked Apollo, "Do you understand the fundamentals?" "I'm not completely sure, but I will do whatever it takes to succeed. That is my way," stated Apollo proudly. "That's good. It's mainly attitude that uplifts the soul. When the soul is strong, then amazing attributes can be discovered through hard work. Prepare for tomorrow."
Chapter 8. Amusement. From the mountains emerged a thin layer of mist and the slightest rain. Apollo stood in the center of the courtyard, being pelted ever so slightly by this rain. Standing there, he was in intense focus when Quan Hong Sung approached him and began with, "For you to ingrain the fundamentals, you must perform deeds and withstand the corresponding struggles. Otherwise, you will not be prepared for your struggle against Foho." "I understand the technique's requirement. Please proceed with the instructions," replied Apollo. "Very well. To begin, your first task is you must chase after a certain animal." In a shock, Apollo asked, "An animal? Why, that can't be that difficult." Kwak looked at him and replied, "Listen carefully now. This animal you'll be chasing is a tiger that lives in the mountains.
It hasn't ever been captured because it is much faster than a normal animal, a normal of its species. The only way you'll be able to capture it and place a seal on its head is by harvesting your inner energy to charge at it. Here's the seal. He handed the seal to Apollo. Quack continued. There is one advantage in that the animal stays in one general area. Thus, it'll be found after a minor search. The location is Mount Taibuksun. Near the peak of the mountain closest to the Wanju border, you'll find the tiger. Here's the map of the area. It shouldn't be far off. After the conversation, Apollo headed southwest into the range. He ran as fast as he could through the steep terrain. As he began getting fatigued, he used the technique he read in the fundamentals in order to release more internal energy, and thus he was able to keep moving forward. After a few hours passed, he made it to the location and began searching. After some time, he found the tiger resting on top of a large boulder. Its fur consisted of a coarse winter coat that masked its ears. Its colors was of a dark Persian hue, masked with a contourless pitch-black stripes, he thought. Let me see if I can approach it quietly. And so he approached cleverly, and as he approached, when he arrived 3/4 of the way, he stepped on a pebble and crushed it. The noise alerted the animal from its sleep. With little time for Apollo to react, the tiger jumped at Apollo. Apollo dodged to the left side. From there he leapt forward to place the seal, and the tiger dashed away from him on the right. The velocity was so fast it made a sound from cutting the air. Recovering from this, Apollo rolled in the front of the resting ground. With his back against the structure, Apollo began contemplating. He's too fast for the charge at. I need to outsmart him. I got it. Time to distract him. Apollo pulled his knife from the sheath and cut a large amount of his sleeve off his shirt and grabbed it in his left hand. The tiger turned towards Apollo. Apollo started yelling, "Come here! You can't catch me!" and continued on with the further taunts. The tiger, visibly annoyed, charged at Apollo. It leapt towards his arm, and Apollo focused his energy on it and moved away quickly. Turning his torso fast, he placed the seal on the tiger's forehead. The tiger slowly reacted by becoming drowsy, and then it collapsed into a deep sleep. "What the hell is that seal's contents?" asked Apollo. Suddenly, a rustle from a nearby rock alerted Apollo. "Who's there?" he shouted. From the shadows came Quack, emerging triumphantly. He approached, and once in conversational distance, he began clapping and stated, "Congrats! My seal seemed to do its job, apparently," he said modestly. "How'd you manage to make that seal?" asked Apollo. "Well, it's simple, really. Experience," Quack stated with a chagrin, and continued with, "The powers of harnessing energy allows for mechanisms to impose one's will. It comes from deliberate experience of the physical and mental reality. From your further training, this path will not be converged. However, along with the speed you've exhibited, there will also be strength training, as it will be necessary to fight foe. He's a formidable fighter." "You don't say. Wait a minute. Were you observing my fight?" Apollo frustratedly stated. "I sure was. If I wasn't, I wouldn't be a good teacher, would I?" asked Quack Socratically. "I understand. Now what is the next performance I need to put on?" begrudgingly asked Apollo. "Your second task will be focused on robustness. Furthermore, let us continue by moving towards the bottom of the mountains." So Apollo and Quack walked down the mountain path. Once they arrived, Quack showed him, Here's a wood chopping site. Here you'll chop 100 pieces of hardwood in order to warm up." Quack picked up the axe on the stump and handed it to Apollo. Apollo, not aware of the difficulty, dived right in action. After the 15th chopped wood, he stated, "Wow, this is rather difficult. Surely there's a way to make this more efficient." Quack looked at him, took the axe, and chopped the wood with ease. "How'd you do that?" inquired Apollo. "I'll give you a hint. Try to center your energy on a point of impact. If you can do that, then it's a matter of cutting through the air." And so Apollo began focusing on the edge of his axe. He struck the log, and "No dice," he murmured, and continued working. "I'm going to get lunch. I'll be back," stated Quack, amused. And he had outbound in an environment. After slogging through the timber logs, Apollo reached the 91st log. This time, however, he concentrated his focus heavily and notched a clean cut in the wood with a rapid, fierce strike. In a shock response, Apollo leaned forward, not understanding what happened, and he hit the next one. The same result, till the 100th log. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked around for Quack. When he didn't find him, he called out, "Where are you?" In a reply, "I'm down here," came from the echo. Apollo hurried down the path and found Quack lifting giant logs on his shoulder. He dropped them, picked one up, violently slamming one of the logs into the earth's material. Apollo stood there in awe. "This is the potential of harnessing your will. It's eternal energy of yourself and your surroundings. Since you've learned the basics of this principle, now we will face a more difficult challenge. You must punch these logs into the mountain. Once you're done, the second one will follow suit," stated Quack. Apollo, feeling confident from his previous triumph, approached the log, stood there in standard position, and whaled the log with a fierce punch. As a result, the log stayed stationary, and Apollo's fist was red-colored. Quack approached. He placed his hand on Apollo's left shoulder. "Use the first principles. Concentrate your blow on a singular point. It's not about pure strength. Rather, it's a matter of technique. In his second attempt, Apollo focused and hit a small area. The log this time moved a centimeter inwards. He repeated the action, and slowly began moving the log into the earth. After a lot of tries, Apollo was able to hit the massive log an inch inwards at a time. He kept punching for a few hours. Eventually, he got the log halfway into the mountain. Apollo stopped. Ugh, I don't have enough strength left now, he announced. Quack walked over and stated, "You'll get the hang of it. Let me show you the potential." Apollo stood back, and Quack demonstrated by standing in position in front of the log. He retracted his shoulders and with exceptional speed and precision punched the log. From its middle position, it reached a stump in the earth. Quack grabbed the second log, motioned for Apollo to hold it up into the land, and then Quack punched the log in again into the halfway point. Apollo let go, and Quack hit it another stump. Apollo stood there stunned. Quack smiled and ascertained, "My ability is not from natural talent. It is from a long time of training and energy concentration. We don't have the time to perfect this technique, yet land a blow of relative strength and preciseness will even take down Fo-Ho if planned correctly. That's enough for today. Let's head back to the settlement." The pair trekked back to the site. When they arrived, Quack told Apollo, "Tomorrow will be the final day of preparation. I will teach you some basics of our martial arts. After that, the rest is up to you." Apollo happily headed to bed exhausted. Quack went to see Yami. There he found Yami meditating in the center of the room he was staying in. "Your friend is doing well," he announced. "The training will conclude tomorrow. I hope your stay has been pleasant, Yami." Yami left his concentration and stood up and approached Quack. "I have nothing to complain about. My meditation is helping me consider some previous action and future action," told Yami. "That's excellent. If I may, one of the reasons why for the separate training is that simply you don't need to focus on your concentration. In your case in particular, you need time to think. I can see it from your aura." Yami looked very shocked and stated, "I'm genuinely surprised. How do you know this?" inquired Yami. Quack grinned. "I can't reveal to you my methods. Those must be earned from true learning. Your time will come. It's now time to observe tomorrow's struggle." "I understand," Yami replied. "Take care. Get a good night of sleep." So Quack left the area and the night passed. Scene. At sunrise, Apollo met Quack at the center of the prayer square. He welcomed Apollo. "Today there will be one teaching and its offset principles will be explored. The teaching is about disarmament. It is clear that Fo-Ho is not a reputable character, and therefore, if treachery is exhibited, then you must have a strong defense as to protect yourself. Here's a staff. Come at me now," Quack announced, and he threw the staff to Apollo. Apollo came charging at Quack head-on. He went for the side sweep. Quack used his arm to block and used his right arm to wrap around the staff. Once there, he moved his left arm and pulled downward from the force. Apollo fell forward and Quack flipped him over off his right shoulder. Apollo fell face first on the ground. Quack walked over and helped him up. "Do you see what mechanisms I used?" asked Quack. "I think so. You made a pivot with your arm and used the energy against me," stated Apollo reluctantly. Quack responded with, "Well, that's mostly correct. Here, try again. This time you should see more clearly." And so Apollo rushed again. This time he came and slashed diagonally downwards from the right side of Quack. Quack stepped forward rapidly with his right foot and hit Apollo's shoulder blade. In response, Apollo fell to his knees and dropped the staff. As you can see, the purpose of that technique is to move quickly by evading and then aiming for a weak spot. As you may know, it is a pressure point. If done correctly, then the muscles will relieve itself, giving way for a following up striking technique. Apollo stood back and took position. "There is one further technique that I will exhibit," told Quack, and he pulled out a knife and handed it to Apollo. "Come at me from any angle." Accordingly, Apollo aimed at Quack's chest with a piercing blow. Quack moved to the side, swiped it. He used his eyes and looked to the side. Apollo followed suit, and then Quack crunched over and hit him in the liver. Apollo gasped for breath and dropped the weapon. In this scenario, I didn't simply use the quick movements to evade. Movements of the eyes allow for distraction and allows the perpetrator to go for a vulnerability after creating an afterimage. Well, that will be all for today. Until next time. Scene. In dawn's time, Fo-Ho and his men arrived at the Followers of Light settlement, announcing, "I, Fo-Ho, am here for a fight. Bring forth the challenger," he yelled. Apollo emerged from the obscure mist to meet his foe in the square. "I'm here to accept your challenge," announced Apollo. Fo-Ho stepped forward and threw off his jacket and walked to the middle of the square. They bumped fists and started fighting. Fo made the first move. He'd been punching rapidly in the brief opening. Apollo held his concentration and punched into Fo's chest. Fo staggered backwards. He smirked and thought, "This is gonna be fun." Quack surprised Apollo by leaning in and attempting a tackle. Fo surprised Apollo by leaning in and attempting a tackle. Apollo tried moving out of the way to the right. However, Fo shifted his legs and completed the takedown. And was on top of Apollo when he started walloping his face. Apollo blocked the best he could but took damage. Apollo concentrated his energy into his knees and rammed it into Fo's chest, it breaking the hold, and he took standard position. On the other side of the area, Ayami was watching from a distance. He was shocked at Apollo's apparently new abilities, thinking, "Don't remember him being able to hit so decisively. Very interesting," he spoke to Quack, sitting there next to him. At some point, I'd like to learn some of those techniques, he continued. Quack smiled and stating, "You've only seen the beginning. Have some patience and see what happened." The pair's response was only the surprised reaction in the air. Foe's men began whispering about the events transpiring, saying, "This is going to be a good one. Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen a good fight. Although the boss hasn't got that serious yet," another one stated. Foe's side kicked at Apollo's head. Apollo dodged under the kicks. Foe moved his shoulder inward and hit Apollo against the fencing unit lying on the perimeter. Apollo punched Apollo through the timber, and Apollo landed grudgingly on his posterior. He stands up and recovers quickly. A barrage of punches follows at Apollo. He quick steps away, mimicking the movements to avoid the blow. Foe overextended his left arm with a jab. Apollo counterpunched him sharp, and Foe spun slightly, and Apollo jumped and clotheslined on Foe as he jumped forward. This time he fell to the ground, gasping for breath. After a few seconds, he scored, "You son of a bitch!" and stood up. Foe took a stance with his arms around his obliques. He clenched his fist to steady himself. This time, however, he took a more defensive positioning. "Come forth if you dare," he told in a much daring tone. Apollo, not realizing the obvious bait, came running forward and sliding into a kick. Apollo smirked and jumped, landing on his patella muscle. A sharp pain rode up Apollo's leg. The pain hit his brain rapidly. As he managed to escape out of Foe's path, Apollo managed to himself with his feet with a limp. Foe, observing his actions resulting, stood there mockingly. "Looks like I didn't completely disable your leg. I won't make the same mistake twice. This is for keep, boy." Apollo at the first starting to enrage in his mind, and then when for a brief moment a thought flickered in his head. He wants me to get angry, so I won't make this mistake. Let's assume he's more desperate than he's leading on. I need to stay level-headed, sense of mind, and if I could accomplish that, then I will determinedly win. Foe approached and began a barrage of punches. Apollo put up a cross block, and then Foe started aiming for his legs, kicking repeatedly with Apollo's legs shaking. He decided to fake losing his footing, so Foe leaned in for a finishing blow. As he did, Apollo grabbed his leg, pushed forward with the open palm, and slammed Foe on his back to the ground. There he wrapped his arm around Foe's throat and began choking him. "Do you give up?" he inquired loudly. Foe remained silent. Apollo, thinking that Foe would die, let go of the grip slightly when Foe raised his foot into Apollo's privates. Apollo fell off in pain and Foe stood up. "Hand me a chain," he motioned to one of his men. The followers brought a 30-foot chain to Foe. "Bring out the weapon. I'm not here for an easy victory," he yelled at Apollo. Apollo, not sure what to do, looked around and then saw Yami out to the distance. "Yami, lend me the use of your sword," he shouted. Yami, staying silent now, realized that this was a true fight to the death. He complied. So he handed Apollo his sword. Apollo took a stance holding the blade edged towards Foe. Foe grabbed the chain, swinging it in the air, and snapped it at Apollo. The lynx grazed Apollo's face. Foe pulled it back and aimed low this time. Apollo jumped over the length, and once he landed, dashed towards his opponent. Apollo swung sideways nonetheless. Foe blocked the sharp edge with the hardened part of the chain links. Foe flickered the length 1, 2, 3. Each time Apollo dodged. This repeated for some time when Foe faked going high and then went low, wrapping the chain around Apollo's weakened leg. Foe pushed on the side, tripping Apollo. He then dragged Apollo towards him. He stabbed the blade into the ground as a response to halt the dragging. Foe released the grip around Apollo's leg and wrapped it around the sword. Apollo attempted to resist. As his chain went around the blade at an angle, he ran up and underhanded punched Apollo in the gut. Apollo resisted the damage, let go of the sword, and led a series of kicks at Foe. He used the chain to block and tried to rip the blade from the earth. When he was unable to, he tried to wrap Apollo around the chain. Apollo avoided this, focusing his energy, and grabbed the sword out of the ground. At this point, there was a deadlock between Apollo and Foe. Both were constrained by the chain, the user and the defendant. While the constraint existed, both tried to maneuver their weapons free, but it wouldn't budge. Foe decided to drop the chain, and Apollo dropped his sword. They returned back to the close quarters combat. Due to the long duration of combat, Foe men began to get anxious. One of them reached out and yelled, "Boss, do you require assistance?" Foe looked at him and stated, "I'm having the time of my life. I'd rather die than have help. If I lose, then you're to drop the matter or take it back to Challenger." Yami looked concerned towards Quack, who was seeing the tension in Yami, and told him, "If anyone interferes, then I will deal with them. There's nothing to be fear. Be patient." Yami replied, "I hope things work out." And they were back to the arena. Apollo, realizing that his stamina was draining, decided to make the first move. He landed many attack on Foe. Foe cross-arm blocked the attacks and counterattacked with his own punches. This continued until Apollo missed a hook. Foe grabbed his arm and twisted it behind Apollo's torso. He bent his arm back to dislocate the shoulder. Apollo winced in pain as a result, and he slid his leg behind in a desperate attempt at Foe and escaped the grasp. It was too late, however. Apollo's arm was numb. He had difficulty trying to move it. Nonetheless, never mind trying to punch with his strength. Because of this, Apollo used his arm for defense to the best of his ability among the current barrage. He managed to back Foe against a wall, where Foe's back hit the structure. Thump. Apollo reached out and grabbed Foe's face and slammed his head into the material due to Foe becoming disoriented. Apollo ran back to his weapons. He grabbed the sword, still stuck to the chain. This time he had both weapons in his possession. He swiped the chain around Foe's hitting arm. Then Apollo proceeded to plant the blade into Foe's left foot. As the blood gushed out of the foot, he grabbed the chain link and wrapped it around Foe's neck against the wall in the structure. He tore the blade from the damaged foot, taking the sword around Foe's head. After getting multiple layers wrapped, he began squeezing. Foe's face became pale. Apollo took the blade and pierced it into Foe's chest cavity from the wound. Foe began coughing up blood. Apollo looked at his eyes and stated, "It's time for you to return to the earth. May peace be with you as you degrade into ash. I shall give an offering for your safe journey." Foe, now barely alive, murmured, "Thank you," and died. Apollo, with severe damage to the right half of his body, limply returned to the followers' prayer center. Foe's men looked onwards in disbelief. Some began to get angry at the events and tried to march forward to avenge their leader, when Quack emerged from obscurity. "That will be all. Please don't sacrifice any more blood today. It is not necessary. Be gone from this blade." And so, Foe's men, out of respect for the shaman, decided to heed the advice. They removed the blade from Foe and handed it back to Apollo, and carried the corpse back northwards to their headquarters. Yami ran up to Apollo and congratulated him. "That was an incredible battle. You did well." Apollo looked at him with an unpleased look in his eyes and returned to his room. Yami understood the pain and let him be. Quack asked some members to tend to Apollo's wounds. Yami approached Quack. "Do you have any further information to help us find where we need to go? That is, the black site around here?" "I think we do. Moreover, there will be supplies granted for your assistance in taking care of Foho. To be clear, I do not condone violence, yet this battle was of the significance of not just Apollo's future, but of our own. Had he not won, then it is likely that Ho's men would have eventually exterminated us. Take some time to recover, and we'll discuss the matter at a later time." "Yes, sir," Yami stated.